Wouldn't it be nice to have several thought leaders in your industry know and love your brand? Start a podcast. Invite your industry's thought leaders to be guests on your show, and start reaping the benefits of having a network full of industry influencers. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. Today we're joined by Richard Chang. Richard is the CEO at NewFoundry. Richard, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jonathan.
It's a pleasure to get to interview you today. We're gonna be talking about sort of your top 4 lessons in failure, which I think is a very compelling topic. You know, it's obviously it's tough to fail. It's never fun to fail, but it can be. It can be useful. It can be full of cautionary tales, and sometimes they are unfortunately wildly entertaining. So thank you for sharing that with us today. But before we do get into these 4 lessons in failure, Richard, maybe you could tell us a little bit about NewFoundry and what you and your team are up to these days.
Yeah, for sure. So NewFoundry, we're based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, right? Pretty much in the Midwest. And we're basically a multidisciplinary innovation studio that fuses basic strategy, design, and engineering all under one roof because we're trying to basically create next generation market opportunities, products, and services, primarily by writing software for our clients. And our clients are basically organizations of all sizes across pretty much any major industry. And what typically we find is that they're actually looking for a trusted partner to deliver these engineered solutions and marketplace experiences that basically help them grow, right? It's all about making money for them. Mm-hmm. And so they look to us to basically say like, hey, sometimes I have an idea on a napkin that I'm not sure if I can bring it to market, or can you actually come up with something based on us having a conversation and determining what kind of challenges they're trying to solve. A lot of our stuff recently has been around fintech and autonomous vehicles. We're doing a lot of research and development and proof of concept for various companies in that space.
Wow, that is very cool. Some cutting edge stuff, and I know that NewFoundry. I mean, you guys have been growing. You guys have had a lot of recent success, which is fantastic. And one of the reasons that we wanted to tap you to come on and be on the show. But I also know that it, based on our email correspondence, it's not the first company that you've sort of led, and that's sort of the genesis, part of the impetus behind today's topic. These Rich's 4 lessons in failure, especially as it relates to sales and marketing. Richard, we're going to be talking about some of your mistakes today, and I think that's incredible that you're coming on and to share that with us. So, where are we starting? Why don't you take it away?
Well, our company's been around for 5.5 years right now, but frankly, if it wasn't for past experiences, especially the failures, we would not be at the point that we are with this company. We've been very, very lucky, have had great growth, have an awesome team, get to work on some really great projects. But a lot of that, frankly, business development and sales is a huge component. And this is the 7th startup that I've been involved in. And it's the 3rd one where I've basically founded or been a co-founder of very early team members, such as employee number 4. 2 of the failures that I had initially was very early on in my career. Well, pretty early on in my career. So this was around 2002 for the first one, where nowadays you hear the word triple play, like Comcast just uses that term all over the place. That's where you're supplying TV, internet, and phone service. We basically thought, before Comcast was even a buzzword, we went into large apartment complexes and said, hey, we can bring you this great solution where you can offer internet, TV, and phone service to your tenants. And you can market it two different ways. One is you can basically say like, hey, it's included as part of your rent. Or two, we can offer it to you at a very discounted rate. And what we do is we basically physically cut the cable modem connection, say coming from Comcast or Charter, whoever the incumbent carrier is, and then drop in a head end. And the head end is basically just a building that's full with a whole bunch of network gear. We'd bring in internet. We'd bring in a whole bunch of satellite TVs, one per channel. And then the phone service that we're doing was actually voice over IP. And so there is another lesson that I'll talk about here in a little bit. But the main thing is it was an awesome return on investment for these apartment complexes, because for them to pay for that head end based on just selling all three of those services for about $25 a month, they paid off that head end in about 6 to 9 months, depending on the size of the apartment complex. So it was a great marketing tool for them. But the thing is, my other founders and I were just a bunch of engineers, and we kind of followed the whole field of dreams theory of you build it, they will come. Well, after about 2 years of us growing, hiring people, we basically ran out of money because we didn't have anyone dedicated to just going out. Because one, what we were doing is pretty new. And so we spent most of our, pretty much, I felt like 18 to 20 hours a day just focused on developing this product and getting it up and running. Because there wasn't really a beta test. It was just, we had some clients, they wanted to do it, so we did it. The other thing that we learned is that timing is important. So that's the other lesson I was talking about, in addition to the sales and marketing, and that the voice over IP piece, it was very, very early on. Like nowadays, everyone knows pretty much about voice over IP, and they understand that, I have to have internet connection and to make sure it's up and running. And at these apartment complexes, a lot of the folks are families, and so they have children. And they would do two things. One, they would want 911 service, which voice over IP at that time did not offer. And then two, a lot of them would actually unplug their cable modem when they weren't using it. Well, when they do that, it takes the phone down. So they can't get calls and they can't make calls. And this is before cell phones, they had is as prevalent as it is today with unlimited calling, that kind of stuff. And so we had very high support costs, in addition to not having any sales and marketing. And we were growing more in like the Midwest and in the Michigan area, the Southeast Michigan, but that's very slow growth. And for us to support the number of staff that we had, and we would always front the initial hardware costs, and then the apartment complex would basically pay us back. And so, it was just a lot of money flowing out, not a lot coming in. So that one failed after 2 years. Then I decided, hey, this voice over IP stuff is really cool. And so I then went to a company that was actually supplying the voice over IP service for us. And again, this was a big lesson in sales and marketing. So we kind of decided, okay, we're not going to make that same mistake. Let's try and do some sales and marketing. But then again, timing happens. And this is another lesson about dedicating enough money or having enough money to dedicate it. Vonage came around, and I'm sure everyone here, as soon as they heard that word, they probably had the Vonage tune pop up in their head. Yeah, they basically killed us because they had a Super Bowl ad, and we had a lot of folks that signed up for us. But then, because voice over IP was very new, most people are not going to sign a dedicated 1 year term. And that was one of the beauties. We said, hey, you can sign a month to month. Well, of course, they had an option. They like the jingle. Vonage had very flashy services they offer. And so we were losing customers by droves. And we ended up folding again. Well, that company had been around about 2 years because they were actually our voice over IP provider when I had the last company, and then another 2 years. So it was basically 4 years, and then that product was dead. So it was really good lessons on one, either you have to figure it out yourself or hire experts to do it for you. But nowadays, I don't think there's any excuse for anyone not to do this, because there's so many tools, so much software out there, a lot of platforms as a service and software as a service solutions that you can do across many different channels, thanks to the technology advances that we have, that I don't think there's any excuse for anyone I don't think anyone should be able to come, say, 4 years from now to your show, Jonathan, and say, oh yeah, one of my lessons was about sales and marketing because we didn't do it. That's where you go, okay, no, you didn't learn anything from me then.
Today's growth story revolves around search engine marketing. Delphix, a big data platform, had hired an agency to manage their Google ads a few years ago, but they weren't seeing the results they wanted to see. Being such a technical B2B solution, they set out to find a team that could take on their challenge. After countless proposals, they found the perfect fit: Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. In just 1 week after launching Directive's campaigns, Delphix saw their lead volume double and their cost per lead drop by 60%. I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
Yeah, got it. Well, and so Richard, as you're talking through some of these lessons, and one of the big ones being that timing is important. Is there, in your opinion, any way then to account for timing? I mean, you've got you've got this great idea, and you want to be first to market, but at the same time, then the market is not ready. So, you have this investment up front where you just know, like, hey, we're going to have to be convincing people why they need this in the first place, rather than even starting from a place where let's just convince them that we're the best. I mean, they don't even, in their opinion, it's not even something that's on their radar. So how would you what kind of advice would you give to someone that you're trying to account for this idea of timing?
Yeah, I mean, timing is always a tough one. And I think that's a constant battle that everyone plays with, even large corporations. It's like, when do we release this product? When are these features that we want to add going to resonate with the particular end users? So there's two components to that in my mind. One is basically, do you have enough funds to get you through that little bit of lull where you can spend all this time product developing until the timing is right to release it? Or two, do you have the ability to shelve what you're working on right now, work on something else, and then pull it off the shelf when needed? And one of the startups that I was at, they were a network services company or a network security company. They had basically, one of the co-founders had done some work as a PhD student. It was really cool technology, shelved it because they said, well, there's no market for this right now. Went on to work on some other research. And then there was an incident that happened, and they got contacted by this one particular, ended up being a client, basically saying like, hey, we heard that you had done something. You talked about it at a conference. Where's that state right now, right? Is it something that we can actually buy or use? And they basically dusted it off the shelf and then actually turned it into a company around that particular product. And so that's typically right. It's unfortunately the money rules for a lot of this. And it's if you can either sustain yourself to have enough time to support it, or do you have enough money to actually focus on something else until the timing's right?
Yep, absolutely. Richard, obviously you have you've got this entrepreneurial spirit. You have vision, and you execute on vision. And as you've talked through, I mean, it's not always successful, but you learn your lessons, from your failures. You take that, you apply it to the next thing until you achieve that measure of that level of success that you're driving towards. So this next question is kind of related to that. It's related to some of the incredible thought leaders that we've been featuring on the show, especially in 2018. But I'd love to know and share with our listeners this idea of legacy. And Richard, kind of what sort of legacy you are hoping to leave behind at the end of the day, whether that's personal, professional, or even a combination of the two.
It's probably more a combination of the two. So the two things that I always have in my head is always striving toward being able to give back. And right now, the way my company operates is that I'm actually a lot out of the day-to-day. I have two awesome partners plus an awesome team that they're able to just continue to keep the company chugging along while I primarily focus on business development and also other endeavors that in the end translate into business development, right? So I'm involved with a bunch of different boards, a bunch of different organizations that have social missions, that kind of thing. But the other thing that I'm very, very interested in has to do with workforce pipeline, where a lot of folks call that like workforce development. And that's a coast to coast problem that we have where there's a lot of companies with job openings where they can't find the skilled workers to fill those seats. So for instance, here in Michigan, we have a big issue with that where we continually try to attract talent from the coasts. But in the end, there's actually there's a population in our area that potentially aren't 4-year graduates from university or college, but there's underserved, underprivileged, low income, low education, veterans, 55 and over, prisoner pipeline, recovering addicts, that kind of stuff, right? And these are folks that have brains that, if given the opportunity, they can actually be awesome contributing members and able to support themselves. And we, as a community, especially the business community and the education community, need to come together and figure out how do we get them at least the base skills that they need. Because it's not just tech, right? I mean, there's trade, there's services, there's hospitality, there's a lot of different jobs that these folks can do. And then we just have to get them at least some base core skills, and then provide the support to those businesses that they'll continue to actually educate and raise the level of skill levels that these new workers have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, I love this idea, this focus on education and community. So definitely a powerful legacy. We wish you all the success in achieving that goal. Sounds like you're certainly on your way with NewFoundry, and things have been going great, and you guys are doing some amazing things over there. So again, we've been talking with Richard Chang. He's the CEO of NewFoundry. And Richard, thank you again so much for your time. It really was a pleasure getting to interview on the show today. But before I do let you go, if any of our listeners are interested in finding out more about today's topic, to find out more about NewFoundry, they want to connect with you, whatever it is, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Sure, yeah. The best way, it has all our contact information, is just to visit our website, which is newfoundry.com. That's NEWFOUNDRY.com.
Fantastic. Rich, thanks again so much. Pleasure getting to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks so much to you too, Jonathan.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.